folks, welcome back to the allotment. We're here today on the allotment and we're going to be planting potatoes. So welcome back. Potatoes today, and we're going to try several different methods of planting potatoes. There's obviously more than one way to skin a cat. In the past I've grown succession plantings of first earlies, second earlies and main crop to get a nice long season. This year I'm not really bothering with that, and I'm just doing main crop potatoes, ones that I've saved from supermarkets and ones that I've just found in the ground as I'm digging up, and that I grew last year, and some that I stored in the shed over winter. We'll show you some of the potatoes I'm using as seed potatoes in a moment. We can see the differences. Now these ones in particular have got massive great shoots on, but they're quite healthy shoots, but they really don't want to be much bigger than this. I've already managed to break a couple off, and that's the danger of chitting your potatoes too much. My main motivation for chitting these was to simply get them through the winter. I bought these at Christmas for my Christmas dinner. They started to shoot before I even got a chance to really use them, so I saved them on a windowsill since December. We're now at the end of March. So my main motivation was just to save them. I did make some mistakes because I chopped some up too early to see how that worked and pretty much killed them. So these ones might not be any good. We'll go through that in a moment anyway. So more than one way to skin a cat, and you can plant potatoes in like grow bags, in pots, in the ground obviously. So we're going to try a little trench in the ground, and we're going to try a bit of an experiment with these 30-litre pots. I've grown them, lots of them in there in the past, but this year I want to try different fertiliser regimes. So I'm going to make a note in my book here. So you can buy a proprietary potato fertiliser. That is quite expensive. So what I've done, and lots of proprietary fertilisers are getting quite expensive that are aimed at the allotment gardener. So I've invested in bags of more commercial style fertilisers. The thing to remember with fertilisers is that when you buy them, they should really come with an NPK rating, which is nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, and they'll be expressed as numbers like 20, 10, 10, something like that, different numbers, and that's a percentage of how much of each chemical is in each, makes up the fertiliser. It never comes to 100% because the rest of it is made of sort of a carrier, binding agent. So anyway, this one is sulphate of potash. This would be the K element in the NPK, and this is 45% potassium. Now potassium is really good for making things flower. So a lot of the time you'll hear, oh yeah, potassium, that's what makes plants have nice flowers. Well, that's true. But it also helps in the photosynthesis process. It helps the plant lay down the sugar it makes from photosynthesis into starch, which should be ideal for potato tubers because they're just a modified stem, mostly made of starch. So this is a 0,045 mixture of mostly potassium. This one I really bought for my sweet corn because nitrogen is quite expensive either way you buy it. Now this one is a 20-10-10, so that's 20 parts nitrogen, 10 parts phosphorus and 10 parts potassium. Potash is basically the same as potassium, long and the short. You can look up in chemistry websites or something like that if you really want to get into the breakdowns and the way plants really use them. This is a real basic explanation. So this has got a bit more nitrogen than I really want for potatoes, but I'm going to try it just as an experiment and see what happens. I'm going to do one pot of just a growing medium, one pot with the potash, the potassium. This is sulphate of potash, aka potassium, and then one pot with this one, the 20-10-10. Hope you're following this. So we're going to try 3 different growing mediums. We're going to just try pure garden soil in the pot, and we're going to try this shop bought compost, a very cheap one from a local supermarket. Comes in at £2 for 40 litres. It's very reasonable. It comes down the train, by the way. Thank you. And at the back there, you can just about see there's some sieved garden compost I've made myself. Pauline across the way and I use this compost either we're saying now, and we pile all our bits and bobs in here, and bits of garden soil go in and everything else. So that's kind of a mixture of garden soil and compost, and we'll just see how it all works. We'll do one pot. I'll show you how to plant one pot, and then I'll show you the notes in my book, and we'll go through what I've done for each one. So one's going to be just a growing medium, nothing else added to it. One's going to have the 20-10-10 added to it, and the other one's going to have the 00-45 added to it. And we'll do 12 pots like that, and we'll see how we get on. And at the end of August probably we'll tip some of them out, probably not all at the same time because I don't need that many potatoes, but we'll tip them out, and we'll see how they yield, we'll weigh them and see how much we get out of them. Okay, so that's enough waffling about that, isn't it? Let me just talk you through some of these potatoes I've got. In the pots we're going to mostly be planting King Edwards. It's not going to be a scientific experiment by any stretch of the imagination. There's too many variables. I haven't got the same, I can't guarantee that it's strictly using scientific principles. It's just it's an allotment experiment, if you like, a trial. So let's look at some of these potatoes I've got here, and I'll talk you through those a bit. Okay, so these are the King Edwards I'm using for this trial. I've let them grow on my windowsill since Christmas, and they've got through the winter okay, although their chits are a little bit long and a little bit delicate. I'm hoping if we get them in the ground now, they'll be okay for us. A mistake I did make was I wanted to try chopping them up this year, see if I get them to go any further. So one tip I would say, if you're going to chop your potatoes up to make them go further, don't chop them up in February and expect them to be excellent in March. This one is practically dead. It might come good, I don't know, we'll try. But it's on its last legs. Obviously I chopped that one into a really small piece to see how small, if it would just grow with just one eye. This one I chopped up just in half, and it's, if it will focus, there we go. This one I chopped up just in half, and it's lasted much better. But I would recommend, if you're chopping potatoes up to make them go further, do them no more than a couple of weeks before you intend to grow them, because they may not survive. I think that one will probably pull through. Anyway, let's talk about different methods of planting potatoes, whether in the ground or in pots. Okay, so 2 ways of growing potatoes: are in pots, and traditionally in trenches in the ground. There's pros and cons to both methods. By far the biggest pro in growing in pots is that they're very easy to harvest. When you're done, especially if you just use shop bought compost, when you're done you tip them out, you find every potato in there, very easy, very clean. Big drawback with it, I find, is they're very hard to keep moist. They dry out very easily, and you're, especially here in the allotment situation, where we can't use a hose pipe, we have to carry the water from the tub. It's very hard for me on a hot season like last year to keep them moist. If they're not kept moist, not wet, but if they're not kept moist, the tubers don't grow really nicely. So a drawback with the trench method is that you can get a bit more slug damage, I found. I think they're a bit more prone to slug damage, and when you try and harvest them, I'm personally very prone to either slicing them open or stabbing them with a fork, and I'm also terrible at finding them all when they're in the ground. I find it really difficult for some reason, and they come out very, very dirty. The major advantage is that you really don't need to bother about watering them. They're in the ground, they find the moisture in the ground, and they do a lovely job of looking after themselves. So, like I said, if you're growing main crop potatoes in a pot, you just fill it to the top, water it, and pretty much forget about it. If you're growing them in a trench like this, it's about a 4-6 inch trench, something like that, 100 millimeters, 150 millimeters, something like that. And as they grow up through, you're going to backfill it with a bit of this dirt, a bit of this soil, and as they grow up through, you're going to have to use a hoe to draw soil onto them, so that the ones that come to the top don't turn green, because green ones are poisonous, certainly if you eat enough of them, if they're very green. So yeah, pros and cons. Ease of harvest, difficult to harvest. Difficult to keep wet, in my opinion. Easy to keep moist. Slightly more prone to slug damage. These are the pros and cons, so you have to decide, and what space you have as well, of course. So yeah, there you go, pros and cons. Okay, so this is the bed we're going to use for our potato in pots trial. All I've done is dig a hole big enough for the bucket, and I've buried it just deep enough to get over these drainage holes. Might go a little bit deeper with this one, but what I'm going to do is put 3 buckets in. This first row is going to be just garden soil, and then we'll put one with shop bought compost and one with homemade compost, and then maybe if we can squeeze it in, we'll do some with a combination of earth and garden soil and different compost. See how we get on, and then we'll do a pot of just soil, just garden soil, a pot of garden soil with that 0045, mostly potassium, and then one with the 20-10-10, the one that I'm not so sure about, because I don't think nitrogen, there's going to be too much nitrogen for potatoes. I think we may end up with lots of green on top and not so much of a crop, but we'll find out. This is the whole point of an experiment, isn't it? So yeah, and then we'll make a note in our book, and we'll keep a tally in that book, and compare at the end of the season what kind of crop we got. So I'll crack on and dig these holes and fill these buckets, and I'll come back and I'll show you just the basic principle of putting the potato in a bucket, which is pretty straightforward, to be fair. Right, so bear with me, back in a moment. A slight change of plan. I opened up my chest of goodies just behind you there, and I found I had a tub of blood fish and bone, which has a NPK makeup of nitrogen 3%, phosphorus 9%, and potassium 3%. So that's a different fertiliser makeup to the other two, and this one has got mostly phosphorus. So that should be quite interesting, because it shouldn't really give any. Phosphorus is synonymous with development of roots. Now, potatoes aren't a root vegetable, they're a tuber. But it'd be quite interesting to compare the 3 different fertilisers. So we've got a grid of 12 tubs here, 12 30 litre tubs. Now what I'm going to do now is for nearest you is soil. I'm going to do plain soil, soil with 0045, soil with 201010, and soil with this blood, fish and bone at what did I say? 393. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, what sort of yield we get. I'll make a note in the book so we don't forget which is which. And we're on with it. So yeah, these pots are just sunk into the. It's a really hot day today, so forgive me for them not all being spot on, level and even, but it doesn't really make too much difference. They're buried enough to cover the drainage holes so that the roots can go out through the drainage holes and get some water hopefully. And then they're further enough apart, I think, so that I can get in between and keep them well watered. But it really is a very, very warm day today, so I'm going to crack on and fill these up, and I'll show you for demonstration purposes just planting main crop potatoes into one of them. So this is the notebook I'm going to use. You can see I've marked on the plot numbers so we can keep a track. We've got the front of the plot, which is up by where the little road is, and the back of the plot. Pot numbers 1 to 12. On this side we've got our pot numbers again, and we'll eventually enter our yields so that we know what we got from each pot. We've got the growing medium, so whether it's soil, shop bought compost or homemade compost, and the fertiliser, whether it's the 201010, the 0045, or that blood, fish and bone, which was what, 339 or something. Anyway, we'll make a note of that. This is the date we're planting them, obviously, and I think we're going to do pot number 6 at the moment. We'll use shop bought compost, and we'll use the 0045, I think, just because that pot is kind of in the best light for this bit of filming. And but we'll go through obviously and plant the rest of them and make a note here. Okay, so hopefully this bright sun isn't causing too much of an exposure issue. All you need to do is put a few inches in the bottom of this pot of this compost. I would normally just pour it in, but for demonstration purposes and giving me time to speak, I'm just going to do it like this by hand. So I'm going to break it up. It's not too bad looking really, this. There's a bit of plastic garbage in it, which I think that's probably from the packet maybe. Anyway, a bit more in. And all we're going to do is break this up. Yeah, I wonder where this is made. It's got a few bits of plastic in it. Never mind, it is cheap, so you get what you pay for, I guess. It looks mostly like bits of wood chip and everything. I've no idea what the nutrient sort of levels are in this. We shall find out, won't we? See how things grow. Okay, right, so what we're going to do, look, is we're going to break this up. We've got, oh yeah, about my finger length of soil in there, of compost in there. Now, main crop potatoes are King Edwards, as I've said, so we're just going to put them in carefully because I've got very big chits on them. I'm just going to rub off these smaller ones because I don't really want the more chits you have, the more stems you have coming up, the smaller potatoes you'll get. So I like a decent sized potato, so I'm going to rub them off just to get these 2 chits as being the dominant piece. We'll pop them in there, we'll bury them in, look. And this one's got 3 main ones on. I'll rub off these smaller ones. It really couldn't be much simpler. Just have to be careful you don't snap these off when they're this big. I'm going to leave 3 on that one. See what happens. So yeah, he's nestled in there, and then we'll gently put some of this around it. So if you're doing second earlies or first earlies, I mean, you have to remember that when commercial growers grow potatoes, they don't chit them. They don't have the space or a windowsill big enough to just keep potatoes, seed potatoes, in cold storage. So fair enough, if you're doing first earlies and second earlies, maybe you did it a few weeks ago, to be honest, and you're trying to really, you know, get them going early so you can have early potatoes, then yeah, sure, chit them and plant them in the ground nice and early. These, and if you do that with first earlies and second earlies, you can put another layer of potatoes higher up. These are main crop potatoes. These are King Edwards, and all I'm going to do is do one layer, because they're going to grow up, come through, and they're going to sprout as they come up. And in this particular pot, so I've covered up now the chits. I'm pretty safe with the chits. I'm not going to break them now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get some fertiliser, which I thought I brought with me. But, I'll go and find the fertiliser, and I'll put some more compost in, and I'll mix it in to this top layer. So as the shoots come up, the stems come up and send off their little potato bits, they can find all that fertiliser. So it's pretty simple, really. I'll join you again in a second when I find the fertiliser. Okay, for demonstration purposes, I've decanted this sodium of potash from its main container into this jar. As far as health and safety goes, that's probably not the best idea. You want to keep your chemicals and your fertilisers and whatever else you use in their original container, because that's got all the warnings on it and everything, and lets people know exactly what it is. Pretty unlikely anyone's going to find this and decide that they're hot dogs, which is what the original container was for. But, you know, a child wouldn't necessarily know what this is and might think it's a sweet or something. So anyway, purely for demonstration purposes, I've mixed it, I've decanted it into this jar. So I'm going to put a little bit more of this compost in now. And I'm actually going to pick it up and throw it in there to save a bit of time. Just so we've got a nicer layer. Okay, there's absolutely no danger now of damaging those chits, is there? So let's break those lumps up. And I'll just put a handful of this 40-40-40 in. Sorry, what am I saying? 00-45. So sodium and potash, it's a mined sort of mineral, really. Sulphate of potash, sorry. It's a mined mineral. And I've looked at the application levels, and with my maths being what it is, aka not great, I've worked out that a handful about like that should be enough. So I'm just going to sprinkle it on there, and I might put a few more handfuls of this in, mix it up, evenly spread, and we'll whack some more in. We'll just top it off a bit. Really not easy to do one-handed. Still needs must. So I've still got half a handful of sulphate of potash. God, this really is a big old lump here, look. Ugh. Wow, this has been well compressed in the back of a lorry or something, or a factory. Goodness me. I hope the potatoes can force their way through this lot. Okay. So break up the big lumps. And see how we get on. Put my other half a handful in. Mix that all up. Sorry, that's a cane falling over. I'll mix that in, breaking up the lumps, and then we'll top it off a little bit more compost from the bag. And that is really very simple. Like I say, a new second earlies, you'd put another layer of potatoes in as well, but these are main crop, so they're going to be absolutely fine. That's nearly to the top as far as you need it, but I'll put a fraction more in. This is apparently a 40 litre bag, but it doesn't seem like there's 10 litres left to me. Anyway, there we go. And we'll continue like that with the rest of these 12 pots. Just leaving a little inch or so on the top. We can always top it up, we've got plenty of this stuff really. Ideally, I'd like to put a mulch on top, but I don't have any. Well, I do, I've got some raspberry twigs sort of chopped up. But ideally, I'd like to put barley straw or oilseed rape straw on the top. But I don't have any of that. So there we go. So I'm going to do the rest of the pots with their various growing mediums, and I'm going to give them some water. I'm going to give them about 12 litres of water. That's the size of the can I've got. So I'll give them one watering can each, and they'll be golden, hopefully. I've made various notes, made a mistake here, so I've altered that. So we can see I've made a key for garden soil. I've called it potting compost, should be probably multi-purpose compost, never mind. And garden compost. So there's a key, should be all self-explanatory. A couple of these, like number 10 for example, I only had 3 small seed potatoes put in there, so I put 3 small ones in. The rest have got 2. This one here, I lost myself. I just forgot to add the 2015-15 as I was doing it, so it's poorly mixed. I made a little note there. The rest of it is all pretty good. This one, number 7, 2 cut parts, so I think that really makes any difference, but there we go. Let's come back in a few months' time and see how it goes. Let's move over and do the potatoes in pots, in the potatoes in trenches now. Okay, so those tubs took way longer than I anticipated. I think trying to film and do everything at the same time. Anyway, as you can see, the sun's moved around, still very warm, and we are going to plant some potatoes in these trenches. And what I'm going to do is put the 20-15-15 on one side and the 00-45 on the other. I'm not going to put any blood, fish and bone here because Mr. Fox, who lives on this land, he very much likes to dig up things that he smells underground. There's a very good chance he might dig this up because there's broken ground, and that's what they do. So yeah, we're certainly not going to risk any blood, fish and bone. But let's crack on, and we'll pop some potatoes in here, the ones we've got left, and fill it back in. Okay, well that's the potatoes in the trench. I think to make it a slightly more valid experiment, I say none of these experiments are scientific in that sense, but to make it slightly fairer, because we've got different varieties of potatoes. We've got Sarpo Mira, certainly mostly on this side. On the other side we've got some random red supermarket potatoes. So I think to make it slightly fairer, I'll fertilise half the row on each side with 20, 15, 15 and the other half with the 0045. That'll give us a better idea of which fertiliser produces the best result. I'm going to stick my neck out right now, and so I think it's going to be the sulphate of potash, because I think the benefits of the potassium with the laying the starch down in the stems, forming the potatoes, is going to be much better than the higher nitrogen of the 20, 15, 15. So put my neck on the line there, and we'll see what happens in August when we come back to start digging these up. So I'll quickly fill this trench in now. So we'll do this front half, so to speak, approximately. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 potatoes. So yeah, so we'll do this 4 at this end. We'll try and make sure we give those the 20, 15, 15, and the back 4 we'll give the 0045. We'll see what happens, won't we? Well, it really is a very warm day. I planted 2 more rows of potatoes there, and I found another box of tiny potatoes I hadn't planted yet. So there's 2 more rows that haven't got any particular, actually, sorry, this one's got no feed, and this one, this end, has got a mixture of both the 20, 15, 15 and the 0045. So it's probably not an economical use of fertiliser to do that, but I thought we'd see what happened. So anyway, all I need to do is finish watering those 12 boxes, there's 12 30-litre tubs, and we're done. So if you found anything useful and to watch this far, well done. Yeah, consider subscribing. Carry on growing with me, and growwithjohn.org. Okay, we'll catch up next time. It's going to be cold at the weekend apparently, but I'm going to enjoy these next few days of glorious sunshine. Watching the butterflies flying around here is fantastic. It's really nice. It feels very summery. Okay, thanks for watching. See you later. Have a lovely weekend, lovely week, whatever day it is. Alright, catch up soon. Bye bye.